Hello. For the final time this week, you'll have to look at me. Hopefully this is the best of all possible worlds, getting the volume that we need, while at the same time avoiding looking up my nose for the entire session. So the other thing that we're starting this week is I wanted you to have some exposure to a famous work of epistemology. I like the 20 questions book because it gives you a broader understanding of different answers to the question, but it doesn't give you much depth into the answer of those questions. So what I hope to do with Hume, David Hume, in the Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, is to give you a very in-depth version of epistemology. So it's not just like, oh, from the surface I can make fun of this. Like, Hume is one of the deeper thinkers of the history of the world, and so it's not so easy to just say, oh, well, he believes everything is known by the senses, so we have to get rid of him, we know that's stupid. Okay, he's a pretty subtle thinker. So, for this week to work, what you're going to need to do is understand the difference between induction and deduction. That's going to be important to the way that we look at things. I'm going to send out a sheet that sort of explains it, but really quickly, we're going to go over that very quickly, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Hume, and then we're going to move on, and then I'll play the piano for you or something. No, it's not true. But, so Hume, no, induction and deduction. Deduction is a logical process that is not dependent on the way that the world is at all. So, for example, if I said all squares are rectangles, x is a square, therefore x is a rectangle. Okay? You don't need to know anything about what x is. You don't need to know anything about what the world actually looks like. If I tell you that all squares are rectangles and I tell you that x is a square, then that has to mean by deductive reasoning that x is a rectangle. Yay logic, said Kristen, and I agree. I did a little yeah. So that's one, for example. But you might say, okay, well, I know that squares are rectangles, so that sounds like it could be about the world. So if I said all Schnarfelbums are Gesarneblats, L is a Schnarfelbum, then that means L is a Gesarneblat. It's the structure of the logic that makes it correct, not anything about whether you know what a Schnuffelbum is. That what I said? I probably forgot already. And a Gesarneblat are. Okay. Induction, on the other hand, is probably how we know a lot about the world. So, for example, every trash night, I think I've used this in class before, every trash night, my recycling bin gets knocked over. Boy, yeah, every trash night it gets knocked over. And every week I see the same kids running away laughing. Induction would tell me that maybe those kids had something to do with my trash being knocked over. Right? So every time I see the trash knocked over, I hear these kids or see these kids, so I put two and two together. Is it certain that it was those kids? No. But an induction can never be certain. Deduction, as long as it's done correctly, is 100% certain. You're making the rules ahead of time. Whereas in the case of induction, I can exist somewhere between 0.00001% certainty to 99.9999% certainty, but nothing in the middle, or all in the middle, but no absolute certainty or no absolute unknowledge. So that's going to be very important to understanding some of Hume's distinctions. I want to give you a little bit about Hume, who he was, and then set you loose. This section might be difficult, so please feel free to let me know. Send me an email. I'm more than happy to go over this kind of stuff. I'm just noticing it's kind of trippy. You can see like the computer screen of my glasses, and then my glasses and the computer screen, and then back and forth. But I digress. So, David Hume was a Scottish thinker. He came to fore in what was known as the Scottish Enlightenment, which was a period of time when the Scots seemed, for some reason, all of a sudden to blossom and create some of the greater ideas in the history of the world. You have people that are working in science. You have Adam Smith in economics, though he stole most of that from Hume. And you have, excuse me, Hume's invention of double malt whiskey, Scotch. That's pretty important too. Hume was a very controversial figure for being considered what Wikipedia and others call There I am, Wikipedia. And other famous philosophers think of the most influential and most intelligent British thinker of all time. He never held a post in philosophy, mainly because people felt that his beliefs led to a type of heresy. They led to a type of denial of God. So every time he was up for a philosophy post, which he most certainly deserved, his appointment was knocked down by the bishops or the kind of church leadership, the church elders that ran the universities. So Hume wallowed away as simply a librarian at Edinburgh University, even though all of his colleagues knew that he was a great mind. Hume was incredibly influenced by Locke and Berkeley, who you've read a little bit from, but he felt that their empiricism didn't go down far enough. He wanted to find a way to make the case, as you'll find, the famous case, that all ideas are copies of impressions. So in other words, that anything that we know about the world comes through sense data. It's a pretty bold claim to make. And he says that as such, we need to be skeptical of the things that we think we know. If everything comes from sense data, then skepticism is the only possible route. Okay? You can see why that might get him in trouble, because if you say something like, well, where did the idea of God come from? And he's going to say, well, there's no sense data to prove that there's a God, so you're kind of shit out of luck as far as trying to prove that God exists. Now, you might say something like, well, I get the idea of God from the world that I sense, but Hume's going to want to say something like, that's not quite enough to be able to make the claim that God exists. So you can understand maybe why he wasn't given the appointments that he was supposed to, at least at the time. I'm going to send out a worksheet that kind of explains how we get to Hume, this battle between rationalists like, well, early Plato and Descartes and those folks, and empiricists like Locke and Berkeley, and how they kind of converge in Hume. So anyway, if you have any questions, like I said, please email, and please get on the movies for this week. I need presenters for them. I really look forward to seeing Rashomon and 12 Angry Men presented. Please submit that today. And again, I couldn't be happier with the level of response and the level of intellectual engagement so far. So keep up the good work, and hope all is well. See ya.